What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV back here for a late night Tottenham update. I'm here not with Sim, but with Sai. How we doing, Sai? Long time since you've been on the channel. You keeping well?
My friend Ben, yeah, good man. How are you? Obviously looking forward to this. It's been a while, so I'm looking forward to this one. There's a lot of things going on in the background aside from the Euros. We must always never forget Spurs, of course. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, kind of like I'm enjoying the Euros, but I just want it to come to it. I don't really want to come to an end because I want to see England do something, but I kind of just want it to pass so Spurs transfers can really kick into gear. But,
Yeah.
let's get into what's being said by these journalists. Let's start off with Jacob Ramsey. I don't know if you saw, but yesterday report came out saying that we offered £20 million plus Giovanni Lo Celso for Jacob Ramsey. Fabrizio Romano said it's true. A few other journalists says it's true. Paul O'Keefe has come out and says there has been no formal bid for Tottenham for Jacob Ramsey. I think some people are potentially taking informal talks between some intermediaries as an actual bid. As of yet, no movement. There is interest, but no formal bid has gone in just yet. Alistair Gold says that with Langer and the team's data-led approach, the case would have been made for the versatile Ramsey's ability to fit into Postecoglou's system, either as one of the number 8s or as a number 10, but if required on the left wing. But recently, Tom Aldnut, the most recent update, says that Spurs are expected to try again for Jacob Ramsey. Spurs believe Ramsey would be a good fit for Ange Postecoglou's system, who wants to add more penetration and dynamism to his midfield next season. First and foremost, do you like Ramsey? Would you like to see him in the club? And second of all, do you think something can happen on this front?
I think there's a few mixed feelings about it. I think certainly it's a name that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's come out of nowhere. I think it's been sort of in the background for a bit of time. But for me, it's like, there's a number of other names on the list, as it were, or perceived to be on a list. We don't know the full accuracy of all of them all the time, but he's a good player. I guess like one of the question marks I have over this transfer is, Villa are going to be seeing this as going to a direct competitor, certainly in this like day and age of how Villa have progressed over the last few seasons, particularly last season, of course. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's going to be quite an interesting one because for me, if I was like the Villa chairman or whatever, which I'm not, but if I was him and their team over there, I'd be thinking, well, if it's a competitor, I'd be wanting more money out of it. So I just can't really see it happening. Like, I don't know if it's just another name because maybe the journalists or whatever are bored and they're just trying to throw whatever out there. Whether this is coming from a PR team related to the player or the agents, etc., I don't know. It was a bit of a surprise name for me personally over this last week that I've been kind of hearing and seeing about it. But there's no doubt he's a good player. I think it's just one of those question marks as well around the positioning, like where exactly does he fit in the team? I know you mentioned like 2 or 3 positions there, and arguably with some of the departures, in the last few weeks, finally from the Spurs squad, it does open opportunity to reinvent the wheel, like for Spurs, if you like, for better words. And these are maybe the kind of players that you're going to get a proper dedicated player, a talented player, and one that's going to do honest hard work for Ange, which is what we want. This is what we want as fans. We want to see week in, week out. So for me, it would be a great acquisition. I wouldn't say it's like the top of my list if I had a big list of players, but it's certainly, if you were to weigh it up against the players that we've just got rid of or still want to try and replace, I think it's definitely an advancement. That's kind of what my mindset is on it at the moment.
Yeah. Look, I'm not feeling too dissimilar. I do feel like Aston Villa might do business with us just because of where they're standing in the PSR rulings, how much they need money. He didn't get that much game time last season. He's a young player, very talented player. I like him a lot, but last season maybe didn't go as according to plan. It wasn't nowhere near as good as maybe the season before. I think maybe an attacking manager like Ange Postecoglou probably could get the best out of him, and I can see him getting quite a bit of minutes as a rotation option next season in a few different positions. Versatility. He definitely brings that to the table. So I think Ange Postecoglou will definitely value that as well. But, as an 8, as a 10, as a left winger, I think he can get a lot of minutes all over the park, to be honest, and especially in like the Europa League, the cup games, when we're going to have so much more football next season. And I feel like over the coming years, with the talent that he does have, he could push for a real, starting spot as well. Maybe not next season, but definitely maybe towards the end of the season, season after. So it's a long-term signing, in my opinion. 23 years of age. And I definitely think he fits in with what Ange Postecoglou is trying to do, a hard worker with talent. So we'll have to see how that one rumbles on over the next couple of weeks. But you talk about priority on your list. Maybe this next guy that I'm going to talk about is quite high up on it, because he's definitely quite high up on mine. And he goes by the name of Eberechi Eze. Tom Allnut, again, from the Times, says that Eze is a key target for Tottenham, who have not been put off by the 25-year-old's release clause, which is set at 60 million. Eze has attracted interest from several Premier League clubs, but Spurs are confident that they can hold off the competition and plan to accelerate negotiations after he does return from the Euros. Regardless of what happens with Jacob Ramsey, Eze is a key target for Tottenham. Spurs are expected to go back in for Ramsey after having an offer rejected. So he's kind of to allude that we're going to look to bring in both Eberechi Eze and Ramsey. Somehow I don't kind of buy that. I know how Spurs work, but solely on Eberechi Eze, I mean, I've said it all along. He's my number one target. I love him as a player. He's in his prime right now. You see, he sometimes carries that Crystal Palace team all on his own. Do you feel like, me and you, we have kind of similar views of the hierarchy of the club? Do you feel like that's a deal that they will go and do, splash out 60 million straight on his release clause? That means a heavy part of that will have to be laid down straight on the table instead of having installments.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's the key thing, is this installment aspect. We know Daniel loves doing that kind of deal, particularly as obviously there's a lot of payoffs still going on, with the stadium, etc. So, for me, he is, like, I would say the top of certainly in the top 3. I think he's definitely like edging towards that top priority. I think he's the exact edge that we need in this squad for next season. There's an argument, a very small argument ahead, to say, well, at Palace, and no disrespect, he is carrying, or did carry, that team predominantly for the season that we've just had. Will he be able to transfer that talent into a more defined kind of club, if that makes sense? Again, no disrespect at all. But it's one of those ones where we've seen so many players, not just at Spurs, but across the board, where a player has been cherry-picked from a club because they have stood out, gone to a better club for argument's sake, and not really delivered on that for one reason or another, whether it's the price tag or just simply, not being able to be cohesive with the rest of the team. It's just a bit of a question. That's the only small question mark I have it. But I'm surprised, even in the Euros, that he's just not having more playing time. We said about a number of the players, but for me, he is like one of the key talents in the Premier League, and I think that's key. That everyone probably picks out a lot of names from Europe, across the world, that we should be getting, but ultimately, it's hard to come by a really proven, talented Premier League player that is potentially an option to bring to the team. So I wouldn't be surprised that Ange has him as well as like the top target. And I think Spurs fans generally would be massively excited if he was to hold that shirt up, a few weeks after the Euros, a Spurs one at that. But yeah, I think it's going to be a difficult one, mate. Exactly as you said, it's this financial perspective of it. Daniel obviously loves to negotiate, whether that's in play, because I can imagine, and it's obviously been reported, that there's a number of top teams out there, maybe even in Europe as well, that's after his signature. And the other aspect of it, and I know Andrew's kind of pushed back on this in press conferences in the past, of do we need to be in the Champions League to attract those kind of players? That could be an arm twister. If the likes of Arsenal, for example, come in, you could consider him that kind of player that they would love to have, as well as many other clubs would. Is that going to be a defining factor, or is there enough at Tottenham, aside from finances, that he thinks that this is going to be an exciting opportunity, a stepping stone for me, whether he moves on in the future or thinks that there's actually a project here? It remains to be seen. But yeah, it's that financial bit, I think, just a bit of a question mark. The only thing I would say is that from a wages perspective, we've obviously reduced that significantly, especially the likes of Ndombele going. Some transfer money has maybe come in, but ultimately we need to start stepping up for this kind of stuff. We want to achieve those top 4 goals. Yes, okay, we could get some talent in a very clever way of recruitment, but sometimes you just have to get, even if it's just one marquee, and build around that. I think he would be like the marquee signing for me in the summer.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when you're talking about maybe being a big fish at a small pond at Crystal Palace, to maybe stepping up and being maybe a cog in a bigger machine, maybe at Tottenham or maybe at a bigger club, I get what you're trying to say. But I mean, I look at him in the friendly games for England in the build up to these Euros. I mean, he was hands down the best player on the park that day, and he's surrounded by top talent. So that says to me that he can definitely swim very well at a big club, or definitely at a much bigger club than Crystal Palace. No disrespect to them, but I think and it's also about selling the project, right? You talk about Spurs not being in the Champions League, Arsenal being in the Champions League. Ange Postecoglou is very good at trying to, with his words and selling those projects. And you saw the words that James Maddison had. He could have gone to Newcastle, been in the Champions League, but he said as soon as he picked up the phone to Ange just sold him the dream straight away. And I think, like, if you bring in these kind of caliber players, then top 4 has got to be a dead cert for us next year, and we got to be aiming for higher things eventually. And I think in the next 2 years that's got to be the aim, right? Not just Champions League.
Absolutely.
But to go for the big goal. And so Eze has to be done if we're serious this window. Like, the release clause is there. The release clause is there. You just go and do the release clause. It's well within our rights to do that with the amount of money this club makes. Paul O'Keefe, Tom Ornott, all these other journalists saying that the release clause isn't going to be a problem for Spurs. So let's hope Spurs can go and prove that. Next up, we're going to talk about Archie Gray, Leeds wonder kid. Fabrizio Romano says that Tottenham have been following Archie Gray closely. However, there is nothing concrete yet. We know there's a host of clubs looking at Archie Gray, all the top teams in the Premier League, teams around Europe even as well. I love this player, and I think he would fit in like a glove at Spurs. He's been playing predominantly right back, centre mid for Leeds this season. He's been a star. I think he's 18 years old or around that age. And when you're looking at the system that Postecoglou plays with the inverted right backs, when you're looking at Emerson going, Jed Spence going, I think he fits in absolutely perfect there as a backup to Pedro Porro, and a rotation option in the Europa League as well.
Yeah, it's one of those future opportunities for an incredible talented player. Again, probably people always argue against this for sure, but again, it's a number of players like this kind of caliber at that kind of age that get thrown out there in transfer rumors and things like this, and sometimes it just doesn't equate to what the talent perceived to be. So I've always got a bit of skepticism on that side of things, but there's just absolutely no doubt that this kid is like incredible. And we've got a few young players that are coming not just through our ranks. I think that would help significantly if we were to look at like 3 to 5 years in the future, with what we've got coming through and adding these kind of players on top. This is the kind of player that I was hoping like Jed Spence would be, and obviously 2 or 3 others over the years like Sessegnon, etc. But with this kind of player, like Archie being, I think he was like linked with, as you said, so many across Europe. I think Real Madrid was thrown in the pot as well as a name. We'll see, but Dortmund as well was another one, and that's quite an interesting one because I think certainly Germany in particular and maybe a couple of the Spanish teams are really focused on a lot of the English young players now. And I think that's a testament to the fact that there's such competition in a lot of the Premier League teams, and that we're always going to search for abroad when actually there's so much amazing talent in the UK or in England already. So I think it would be an absolute coup if we got him. Not so much like winning the race against other European teams or even England teams to get his signature ahead of that, but just from that exact point that you've made. And I think the critical thing is like he fits what we want to try and achieve, or what Andrew wants to try and achieve with this team moving forward. And I think that's the key stage, because if you do have an injury to the likes of Porro, you want someone that's going to not only be an understudy to some of these professional players, but also a player that, you know, hopefully, if the progression is there and the talent turns into, you know, a proper professional footballer, we're going to have the benefit of that in a few years' time. And we know Daniel loves the sell-on fee and everything like this. If it does equate to the fact that he gets very good, and we have to then unfortunately sell him on to a bigger team, then that's just the way it goes. But you know, if we can get him on board, you know, it's another addition. If we get the likes of Eze and Archie, you know, it's really, I feel, creating a bit of an ethos like I felt when Pochettino was in that like second, third season, where getting rid of the deadwoods, which was a bit of a slow process even back then. I'm starting to see similar patterns with this summer, or at least who we're sort of linked with. And if that can, you know, manifest into like the realistic side of it, then that's going to be incredible for us, I think, moving forward, and certainly for this season. Yeah, I'd love to have him in the team.
Agreed. I mean, it will be a very, very hard deal to do, but we do know Leeds, you know, struggling financially as well. So I do think a lot of teams will be sniffing around for Archie Gray this summer. So it'll be interesting to see which way he does go. Let's talk about Conor Gallagher, the story that's been rumbling on all summer. Tom Ornut says that Tottenham highly unlikely to meet Chelsea's 50 million valuation of Conor Gallagher, despite the fact that he's been a player very much interested to them all summer. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, to be honest. I don't see him really leaving Chelsea. Chelsea boy, Cobham boy through and through.
Yep.
Hasn't really impressed me in the England team this Euro so far. I thought he had a poor display in the last group game. But yeah, look, I wouldn't be disappointed if we brought him in. I think he is a good player. But I just think there's just way too many moving parts to this. Chelsea dealing with Spurs buying him for 50 million. I just can't see any of these situations happening. So yeah, I can completely understand this one.
Yeah, it is a bit of a weird one. I mean, I think there's actually quite a lot of conflicted opinion on Conor in general throughout Spurs fans. I'm sort of on the fence personally, but I do see why, or certain elements as to why Andrew would want him in the team. I mean, I think there's a small handful of players in the Premier League that I would call like engine rooms. Like, he is an engine on that pitch. Someone who gets like really stuck in, very good at winning that ball back. And, you know, I would say like in that Chelsea team, which was pretty poor for majority of the season, he was one of the standout players. I would not be angry at all with him coming across to us. I think he would be a good addition, but exactly to your point, I just can't really see it happening. And irrespective of whether they have to or don't have to because of fair play, you know, rules and regulations, whatever, I'd be surprised if they would want to sell one of their best assets, irrespective of what Spurs fans think or don't think of Conor. Like, he is a good player out there, and there will be clubs after him. I can't see Chelsea wanting to sell him to Spurs. And what I find weird about this one is that this rumor mill started relatively, maybe even 3/4 of the way through the season. There were some snippets in like January time of that window, of course, but it really started to, you know, boil upwards towards the last sort of month or so before the season ended, which is why it's kind of like a standout bit more to say, well, actually, usually with rumors, they like fade in, fade out, but this one just hasn't gone away at all. And there's been no like stamping out of it, because usually either a player eventually, or one of the clubs or whatever it is just comes out with a stance, or even journalists get sniff of like, oh, this is actually not going to happen anymore. It just keeps coming and coming. So there's something there. As I said, I wouldn't be upset at all with him, coming to the team. I think he'd be a good addition, and I think we do need this like adaptive squad if we really want to achieve, the top for ambition and beyond, hopefully, and try and win some form of a trophy. We say this every year.
Malta Cup.
We need
a Malta Cup against Bayern Munich in the home friendly. Yeah,
exactly. So like we need that, not only that depth, but actually good quality depth. And people are always arguing, oh no, Connor's not good enough. Well, actually, he's a lot better than a lot of the players we've had over the last couple of years. Certainly better than the ones that we're getting rid of or have gotten rid of already. And he is a good player to be in addition, hopefully, fingers crossed, to all these other ones, whether the ones that are rumored or or that as at least a minimum quality, to try and achieve something, because that's what every other top club has, is like good depth, but good players in that depth as well. We've just had the same boring players the last 3 or 4 years to come on for a player, and we're like, well, this is like disappointing. When these players come on, nothing happens, or it just goes backwards, or we lose the game. So I think it would be a good addition, but yeah, I'm quite surprised there's such a conflict. It's almost like 50-50 in the Spurs fan groups, whether they want him or not. So it's definitely one for the comments, I think, in this video.
Well, let us know in the comment section below. But I can't really see like Connor even trying to push a move to Spurs and trying to, and with his, like when we went to Stamford Bridge at the back end of last season, there was a massive banner in the home end saying, I think once a blue, always a blue, something along those lines. And I just can't see him like trying to lose that good value or good faith he does have with his homeboy club. And I think if you believe the rumors and the discrepancies are that they can't agree a contract and he wants a lot bigger wages than Chelsea are offering, then the way I see it rumbling on is that he stays at Chelsea for another year, doesn't sign the contract, maybe gets a contract halfway through the season if he really proves his worth for that kind of wages. And then he'll have his pick, if he doesn't sign the contract, have his pick of anyone that he wants to go to and get that big signing on fee as well. So
a lot of players are doing that now. A lot of players are doing that. It's so evident. And whether that's right or wrong is our opinions, obviously, but as a player, in most instances money talks, and I can imagine that he could get quite a good deal out of it if he played that card, for sure.
Yeah. Last one we're going to talk about in terms of the incomings is Riccardo Calafiori, a player I am absolutely in love with, even more so after seeing his performances at the Euros for Italy. Definitely, I think, the shining light in that Italy team so far in this Euros. Tom Ornat say that Calafiori's performances have caught the eye of Juventus and various Premier League clubs, including Tottenham. Fabrizio Romano said this evening that Bologna feel it's almost impossible now to keep Calafiori at the club, with big proposals expected. Premier League clubs are now keen. It was rumoured towards the back end of last season that Spurs were interested, and 25 million was the asking price. Now you're probably thinking about doubling that, if not more. I mean, this guy is a huge talent, left centre-back, left back. I find it hard to believe that this is a deal that Spurs can get over the line with how much he's going to be going for. You're looking at Arsenal sniffing around now and them they're potentially getting rid of Kiwior and bringing him in. I feel like he's destined to go to a really big club this summer.
There's no doubt. I can dream, you can dream, we can dream. But I can't see it happening. When you put performances like that on a world stage, let alone a European stage, but a world stage, because everyone ultimately watches it. But there's no doubt in your mind that this guy's a star, and he would be that typical kind of Real Madrid kind of player. I'm not saying he'd go to Madrid, but it's that kind of status. I don't think Tottenham are anywhere near that caliber overall to be able to get a player like that at this moment in time. Who it might change in a few years' time. You're talking about a lot of money to bring that kind of player to Tottenham. It's one thing trying to drag potentially Eze across, which is still partially a far-fetched dream in some instances because the amount of clubs that could be after him. But yeah, that game was absolutely phenomenal for him. And if people did have any doubts or any thoughts or didn't know too much about him, that was like one of the greatest performances that you could put out there to showcase how good you really are in a big stage format. Obviously there's more games to come for the Euros, but I just can't. It's not going to happen, I don't think, at all. And certainly not this season. In a few years, maybe. But then, when you're on that pathway and you've gone to a high caliber club, you very rarely step down once you're in it. So I think it's people won't like me saying it, but I think it's a bit of a pipe dream, that one.
Yeah, well, let's hope not. Let's hope that Spurs and Paratici can work his magic with the Italian counterparts and see what can happen. But yeah, I agree. I don't think this is one that is going to happen. But all I can say is that I hope and dream it can happen in this window again, because he's one that could just absolutely fit in like a glove. Let's say, like, if you brought in Archie Gray, Calafiori, and Eze into the club this summer, I mean, that after the negativity the Timo Werner transfer brought to a lot of the fan base, I don't know what your opinion was on that one, but I mean, that will go some way to saying like this is going to be like one of the best windows that we've had in a very long time. But let's finish off talk about Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Again, Tom Allnut says that Højbjerg has 4 clubs interested in him, including Atletico Madrid and Napoli. So it looks as though we have reported on it quite a bit over the last couple of weeks that Antonio Conte is keen to have a reunion with Pierre-Emile Højbjerg at Napoli. We saw like Højbjerg, one of his best moments in a Spurs shirt was probably under Conte in that kind of system. So it makes complete sense that Conte is after him. It makes complete sense that Diego Simeone is after him. And hopefully we can get a bit of a bidding war going on for Pierre.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's your grandpa's favourite for sure. I think he's been. I think he's been a great servant for like Tottenham. I've always said that there's been moments where he's been absolutely phenomenal, but there's also been a lot of moments where he's caused a lot of havoc in our defence by passing it backwards or to the wrong team, basically. So there's a bit of a mixed match of consistencies with him, but that might just come from the fact as well that, albeit he's very professional and a good guy, obviously, that inconsistency of playing has probably affected that element of it as well. There's been a bit of a mixed match.
That's the reality.
Yeah, exactly. I think at the end of the day, when he was brought in originally, it was in a totally different system and it suited him. And there was a great range of passing, etc., that we all witnessed in moments and some good goals. But the time has come. I felt like that maybe a couple of seasons ago already, to be honest. Even the last batch of Conte's season, and obviously more into the season just past, that you can tell, like, just by looking at his demeanor when he comes on, that this guy's a true professional. But you can also see the edge in his face that he not necessarily doesn't want to be there, but his mind is elsewhere. Like, he's come to do a job today in this game. He's going to do it to the best of his ability. Sometimes always didn't work out, but you just knew that he was so professional in that element. And, egging his players, his teammates on when he was coming on. He didn't really celebrate. I don't know if anyone noticed, but he didn't really celebrate most of the goals that occurred, even the last minute ones where everyone's going chaotic, and he was just like pretty chill. And that's like the mindset of someone that's like, cool, doing a good job here, but I don't necessarily want to be here anymore, if that makes sense. So it's the time has come for sure. And I'm sure deep down, even if Spurs fans didn't like him for whatever reason, they'll at least acknowledge that he, wore the shirt with pride. He was very professional, and I think he suits those leagues, whichever one he goes to. I think he just suits that kind of ethos of those leagues. I would say, disrespect that some of them are a bit slower, where he does like that time on the ball, the time to look up, give that great pass that he does on most occasions. So, it's, I wouldn't say I'm sad to see him go. I think it should have been done last summer, in my opinion. But we have to acknowledge that he's been a good servant, a very, very good professional, and probably a role model to a lot of the players there as well, and the academy. So obviously wish him well and I wouldn't be surprised at all that he's not going to be at Spurs, you know, at the end of this window.
Yeah, totally agree. Definitely send my best wishes to Pierre as well. Great servant to the club, always gave his all, which, you know, can't be said about everyone that has gone this summer. So, yeah, there you have it. That is our Tottenham update. I want to thank you for joining me today, Si. It's been a long time. Hopefully, we'll get you on more regularly and definitely in the near future.
It's good to see you, Ben. And come on, you Spurs, of course.
Absolutely. And big up to all of you out there. Put your thoughts in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.